It's a common misconception that you need the most expensive, top-of-the-line equipment in order to churn out radio-ready records. Yet I learned in college that the quality of the mix has more to do with the person mixing the record than the equipment that was used. During my senior year of college, I was in the last stages of my final project in my Producing Recording Music 3 class. Beyond the stress of the recording sessions, which is a story in and of itself, I had a bigger problem with the way the mixes turned out. At that time, the engineer had over 10 years of experience. The studio we recorded and mixed in probably contained upwards of $2 million worth of equipment. The mixes sounded amazing in the room, and I walked out on cloud 9. None of this mattered. Why? Because the mixes sounded like trash when I listened to them back at home. The bass was super weak, the panning was too drastic, certain instruments were clashing with others, and more. This situation was a recipe for disaster from day one. The engineer had no knowledge of the quirks of the room or the equipment, so he had no way of knowing that the room wasn't calibrated and the monitors were bass heavy. And we didn't have time to test the mixes on other speakers, which is a must do. 2 hours after I was jumping for joy at how great the mixes were, I was stressed out and trying to figure out how I could fix them before my final presentation. So what did I do? I opened up the Pro Tools sessions, exported all the tracks dry since I didn't have any of the plugins or the outboard gear used at the studio, imported them into Logic Pro, and remixed them on the best set of headphones I had at the time, a $15 pair of Philips headphones. It took a couple of tries since they didn't have the best sound. It also didn't help that the L train ran directly outside of my window at the time. Long story short, I made it work, got an A on the project, and was complimented on how polished the mixes were. How did I do it? With the odds stacked against me, I pulled on every piece of knowledge I had ever learned on the topic. There are a million ways to mix a song, but the following tips are essential. Balance the mix. Working with only the few plugins I had at the time and absolutely no outboard gear, I stuck to what I knew. Equalization, panning, and volume control. This process allows you to tone up each track and carve out its own space. If I knew then what I know now, I'd also use the art of compression to aid in this process. I equalized each track by reducing and or cutting any frequencies that weren't needed in order to free up audio space for other tracks that needed those frequencies. I then panned each one a little bit to the left or right depending on what sounded better to me, and tweaked the volume of each to make them blend well together. At the end of this process, I used one of the mastering suites built into Logic to add the extra polish and bounce the mix down. Use a reference mix. For each mix, I found a similar sounding professionally mixed song from my iTunes collection and inserted it into the session. This way, I could compare and contrast between the mix I was doing and the song mixed by a professional, then adjust my mix accordingly. This helped level the playing field with my mediocre headphones, since I was listening to both through the same source. Check the mix on different sources. To make sure that I didn't show it to my final presentation with crappy recordings, I tested each mix on different audio sources, a boombox, a car stereo, my iPod, and several different computers. I took notes from each sound source on what needed to be fixed and adjusted accordingly. This step is very important. Every set of speakers and headphones is made different, so you want to make sure your song sounds good on all of them, not just yours. Avoid sonic burnout. If you find yourself mixing for several hours and things are starting to sound muddy, you have entered the stage of sonic burnout. At this point, you should step away for a few hours or more because trying to push through the stage can only damage your mix. Every single time I've ignored this step, I've regretted it. What did we learn? Audio mixing is the organization and frequency manipulation of several audio sources to make them sound good together. While I had the privilege of taking several classes in college on the subject, you guys have the advantage of the internet and superior technology. YouTube has tons of tutorials on every plugin and piece of equipment you can think of, and there are various free articles floating around like the 5 stages of every good mix and 3 tips for mixing in a bedroom. There are plenty of songs on the radio today that were recorded and mixed on equipment that costs next to nothing. There are also songs recorded in multi-million-dollar studios that sound like hot trash. I also love to mention that Rihanna's Umbrella was based around a drum loop built into Apple's GarageBand software. And that song was a worldwide hit that went several times platinum. At the end of the day, it's not what you have, but how you use it.